When the lecturers of Kenya's public universities downed their tools in mid-September 2025, the mood across campuses changed overnight. Lecture halls fell silent, assignments were left unfinished, and thousands of students who had just resumed studies found themselves stranded. The strike, led by the university's academic staff union, UASU, was born out of years of frustration over unfulfilled promises, unpaid arrears, and what lecturers saw as chronic neglect by the government. At the heart of their grievances was the implementation of the 2017 to 2021 Collective Bargaining Agreement, CBA. The government had agreed to pay about 7.9 billion Kenyan shillings in arrears to university staff across the country, but much of that money had remained unpaid years later. Lecturers accused the state of dragging its feet and treating the university sector as an afterthought, even as the cost of living and institutional demands continued to rise. They also wanted the government to begin talks for a new 2025 to 2029 CBA that would improve their pay and working conditions. From the very first week of the strike, the Ministry of Education called for calm and pleaded with the lecturers to return to work, insisting that the Treasury faced financial constraints. Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Ogamba made repeated appeals, urging UASU to give dialogue a chance, saying that the government was willing to release part of the money immediately while the rest could be settled in phases. The lecturers, however, stood firm, arguing that partial promises had been made before and broken. As days turned into weeks, the standoff deepened. Students remained idle in hostels, university calendars ground to a halt, and frustration began to boil on campuses. Vice-chancellors warned that semesters would have to be extended or possibly repeated if the strike dragged on. Meanwhile, the government sought every possible channel to resolve the impasse. Treasury officials met university councils and union representatives in several closed-door meetings, offering what they described as a realistic settlement plan. The lecturers declined to back down, saying they had lost faith in the government's promises. By the third week, pressure was mounting from the public and from Parliament. Members of the National Assembly's Committee on Education, led by Julius Meli, stepped in to mediate. The committee summoned both UASU and government officials, urging compromise for the sake of the students. In emotional exchanges, MPs pleaded with lecturers to think of the learners who had nowhere to go and whose studies were hanging in the balance. The union leaders listened but insisted that without concrete action, there would be no teaching. The government's pleas grew louder. Officials warned that the prolonged strike was threatening to paralyze the higher education sector and dent the country's global academic reputation. There were even fears that final-year students would be delayed from graduating. Cabinet Secretary Ogamba once again appealed publicly to the lecturers' sense of patriotism, saying, "Let us not hold our students hostage as we continue to seek a lasting solution." Still, the strike continued. Around mid-October, cracks began to show on both sides. The government hinted it could raise part of the money before the end of the year, while UASU began to soften its position slightly, acknowledging that prolonged paralysis was hurting both lecturers and students. Behind the scenes, meetings were taking place at Jagoo House between senior ministry officials, university councils, and union leaders. The government offered to pay 5 billion Kenyan shillings immediately and release the remaining 2.9 billion Kenyan shillings in the next financial year. It was far less than what the lecturers had initially demanded, but it was the first solid offer on the table in weeks. By early November, the tension had reached a turning point. The Education Committee once again brought both sides to Parliament, where fresh mediation talks were held. This time, there was visible goodwill. UASU Secretary General Constantine Wasanga signaled a readiness to end the strike if the government committed itself in writing to a phased payment plan. After several rounds of negotiation, an agreement was finally struck. On November 4, 2025, the decisive meeting was held at Jagoo House, bringing together the Ministry of Education, the Treasury, the Interpublic Universities Council's Consultative Forum, and the university unions. It was a tense session that stretched late into the evening. By the time it ended, both sides had agreed to a return-to-work formula. The government committed to pay the 7.9 billion Kenyan shillings arrears in 2 phases, the first disbursement before December 2025 and the rest by July 2026. In return, lecturers agreed to resume duties immediately and pledged not to strike again before 2030, provided the government kept its word. The following day, November 5, 2025, UASU officially announced the end of the 49-day strike. Relief swept through the nation's universities as lecturers prepared to return to classrooms and students flocked back to lecture halls. There was a sense of cautious optimism, gratitude that the stalemate had ended, but lingering doubt about whether the government would truly deliver this time. The strike had left deep marks on the education sector. Academic calendars would need to be adjusted, lost teaching time recovered, and trust rebuilt between the government and educators. Yet, as classes resumed, the resolution was seen as a hard-won victory, a testament to the power of collective bargaining, patient dialogue, and the shared understanding that the future of Kenyan universities depends on mutual respect and accountability. After 49 days of silence, the campuses of Kenya finally came back to life, with the hope that lessons learned from this bitter standoff would prevent such disruptions in the years to come. Just hours ago, the long and painful 49-day strike by lecturers in Kenya's public universities finally came to an end, a decision that has sent waves of relief, excitement, and uncertainty across the country. After weeks of stalled learning, endless negotiations, and growing tension, the university's academic staff union, UASU, officially announced that lecturers will be returning to work immediately following a deal reached with the government. Across the nation, the announcement is being welcomed with applause, especially by thousands of university students who had been forced to go back home when their institutions shut down. For the first time in nearly 2 months, there is hope that lectures will resume and academic life will slowly return to normal. Many universities had completely closed their campuses after the strike dragged on beyond the first few weeks. Lecture halls were locked, research projects frozen, and administrative offices almost deserted. Students who had already paid their fees were sent home indefinitely, while others left on their own, tired of waiting for a breakthrough that never seemed to come. In towns like Eldoret, Kisii, and Nairobi, entire student neighborhoods went quiet, a rare and unsettling silence for places that usually burst with youthful energy. Now, with the strike called off, universities are racing against time to plan how to recover from the disruption. Vice-chancellors and faculty heads are expected to meet within the next few hours to prepare new timetables and academic recovery plans. Most institutions are likely to compress their semesters, extend lectures into weekends, then possibly push exam schedules to December or early January. The priority is clear: salvage the academic year before it's too late. Students who had already gone home are being advised to start preparing to travel back to their campuses. Many are expressing mixed emotions, joy that learning is resuming, but also frustration that their studies were halted for so long. "I'm just happy it's over," said one student from Moi University. "We've wasted so much time, and now we just want to finish the semester." The government has promised that the new agreement will be honored without delay. Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Ogamba confirmed that funds for the first phase of the lecturers' arrears will be released immediately, ensuring the 7.9 billion Kenyan shillings owed to university staff will be paid in 2 stages, one before December and the rest by July next year. The Ministry of Education is also working with university councils to ensure a smooth transition back to learning and to prevent another disruption. Meanwhile, university towns that had fallen silent for over a month are already preparing for a surge of returning students. Hostels, restaurants, and matetes that depend on student activity are reopening and restocking, anticipating business to bounce back within days. The end of the strike has not just revived education, it has also reignited local economies that had been bleeding from the shutdown. However, education experts warn that the real challenge begins now. Universities will need to rebuild lost academic time, reorganize research schedules, and help students regain focus after weeks of idleness. Some lecturers are calling for immediate dialogue between unions and management to ensure the new agreement is fully implemented so that such a crisis never happens again. Still, the mood across Kenya today is one of cautious optimism. For the first time in nearly 2 months, hope has returned to the corridors of learning. Students are packing their bags, university buses are preparing to ferry learners back to campus, and lecturers are dusting off their notes, ready to pick up from where they left off. After 49 days of silence, Kenya's universities are coming back to life, and with them, the dreams of thousands of young people who have been waiting anxiously for this very announcement.